Welcome to the deep dive. There's this real excitement around studying abroad, especially coming to the United States. It's more than just getting a degree, isn't it? Feels like this huge chance to, well, see new things academically, experience a different culture, really build your future. But like any big adventure, there's a map you need, specific points to navigate. So today, we're doing a deep dive into that F-1 student visa journey. We're focusing on the common hurdles, yeah? And how to actually get over them. Think of this as your cheat sheet, maybe, giving you the key insights, the practical stuff, so you're really prepared.
That's exactly the plan. We've gathered a lot of information, and the goal here is to pull out the really crucial bits. We want you to understand not just what the rules are, but why they're there, why they matter. It's all about setting you up for a smooth, successful time here, avoiding those common traps and making the most of it.
Okay, so let's unpack this, starting right at the beginning. The F-1 visa itself. What is it, fundamentally?
Right. So the F-1, it's specifically for international students coming for traditional academic programs, universities, colleges, seminaries, that kind of thing.
Got it. Academic study.
Exactly. And the absolute key concept you need to grasp right away is maintaining status.
Maintaining status. Sounds official.
It is, and it's critical. It basically means you're doing what you said you would do, study, and you're following all the rules that come with the F-1 visa. It's different from, say, an M-1 visa, which is for vocational or non-academic study. Different rules, different purpose. You got to stick to the F-1 lane if that's your visa.
Stick to the plan. Makes sense.
And speaking of plans, arrival is key. You can't enter the U.S. more than 30 days before your program starts. That's the window. And then, this is really important, contact your designated school official, your DSO, as soon as you enter the country. Let them know you've arrived. And then check in again, physically, at the school, no later than your program's official start date. That check-in is non-negotiable.
Okay, so those first steps are crucial. Entry window, check in with the DSO twice. What comes next for maintaining status?
Right, once you're settled in, the big one is full-time enrollment. You absolutely must be registered as a full-time student every single semester.
And full-time usually means?
Typically, it's a minimum of 12 credit hours for undergraduates and usually 9 for graduate students.
Yeah.
But always check with your specific school and DSO. The reason this is so critical is that it proves your primary purpose here is studying. Deviating from that, it raises immediate flags.
So what if something happens, like you get sick or struggle with a class? You can't just drop a course.
Absolutely not on your own. If you need to reduce your course load for any valid reason, academic difficulty, medical condition, you must talk to your DSO first. Get their authorization before you make any changes. Skipping that step, that's a really fast way to lose your F-1 status, seriously.
Okay, wow. Get authorization first. Got it. What else?
Next up, keeping your SEVIS information current. SEVIS is the Student and Exchange Visitor Information System. Think of it as like the official immigration record of your stay.
So keeping your info updated there.
Exactly. Through your DSO. If you move, change your phone number, email, even change your major or program, you have to report it. If the information SEVIS is wrong, it looks like you've disappeared or you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Accurate records are essential.
Right. Keep the system in the loop. And then there's work. Right. Lots of students want or need to work.
Yes, and this is a huge area where people get tripped up. Employment. The rule is crystal clear. You need proper authorization before you start any off-campus work. That authorization comes from your DSO, and depending on the type of work, possibly U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS.
So no under-the-table jobs, even if it seems small.
Definitely not. Unauthorized work is a major violation. It can get your F-1 status terminated, lead to deportation. The consequences are severe. It's just not worth the risk.
Okay, duly noted. Authorization first. Anything else on the core requirements?
Just one more main point on the foundation. Program completion. Your Form I-20 has an end date. You need to finish your studies by that date. If it looks like you'll need more time, you have to request an extension from your DSO before that I-20 expires. Don't wait until the last minute. Be proactive.
It really sounds like the DSO is the key person in all of this.
Absolutely. Your designated school official is your lifeline. Any questions, any potential changes, changing majors, programs, transferring schools, taking a leave, traveling outside the U.S., moving apartments, needing an extension, anything. Talk to your DSO first. They know the regulations. They can guide you. They can process the necessary paperwork. They're your most important resource. Seriously, make friends with your DSO.
Okay, that's a really clear picture of the basics. Now let's get into something specific. You mentioned working. You said it's possible, but regulated.
Right. There are specific ways F-1 students can gain work experience, typically called practical training. And there are two main types, CPT and OPT.
CPT and OPT. Let's break those down. Maybe start with CPT.
Sure. Curricular practical training, or CPT, is employment that's an integral part of your academic program. It has to be directly related to your major and required by the curriculum. Think internships or co-op programs that are built into your degree requirements.
Okay, so it has to be part of the school's plan for you, essentially.
Exactly. And the authorization for CPT comes from your DSO. They authorize it in SEVIS, and it gets printed directly on your Form I-20. Big point here. You need to have the job offer first before the DSO can authorize CPT. And you absolutely cannot start working before the start date listed on that I-20.
And CPT happens during your studies, right?
Yes, always before your program end date. It's authorized for a specific employer and a specific time period. You can potentially have multiple CPT authorizations if your program needs it. Now, here's the really crucial warning about CPT.
Okay, important heads up coming.
If you complete 12 months or more of full-time CPT, you lose your eligibility for OPT entirely.
Wow, okay. So using a year of full-time CPT means no OPT later?
Correct. Part-time CPT doesn't affect OPT eligibility, but a full year of full-time CPT does. It's a major planning point many students miss. It can really impact post-graduation plans.
That's a huge takeaway. So how does OPT differ then?
Optional practical training, or OPT, is also temporary employment related to your major. But the key difference is the authorization process and flexibility. Your DSO recommends OPT in SEVIS, but the actual authorization comes from USCIS. They issue you an employment authorization document, an EAD card. That's your permission to work.
So an extra step involving USCIS? Is it more flexible?
Generally, yes. With OPT, you can work for any employer as long as the job is directly related to your field of study. You're not tied to one specific company like with CPT. And crucially, OPT can happen during your studies, but most students use it after graduation. It's the standard way to get work experience in the U.S. post-completion.
So CPT is curriculum integrated, DSO authorized during studies, and full-time use impacts OPT. OPT is more flexible, USCIS authorized, and often used post-graduation.
That's a great summary. Understanding these distinctions is vital. The choices you make about CPT, especially full-time, directly affect your future OPT options, which is, a really common goal for students wanting U.S. work experience.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. You've got your visa, you understand the rules, you fly to the U.S. Talk about that arrival moment, the port of entry. You said having a visa is an automatic entry.
That's right. The visa just lets you knock on the door, basically. Travel to a U.S. port of entry, like an airport. But it's the Customs and Border Protection, the CBP officer, who decides whether to let you in. They grant admission.
And what are they looking for? What's the point of their questions?
They're verifying a few key things. Is this really you? Is your purpose for entering legitimate, or are you really coming to study? Are your documents genuine? And of course, they're screening for any potential fraud or security risks. That's why you absolutely must have all your immigration documents, passport, visa, I-20s with you in your carry-on, not checked luggage.
Makes sense. Now, sometimes students get pulled aside for, secondary inspection. That sounds intimidating.
It can feel that way, but secondary inspection is actually a pretty standard part of the process sometimes. It doesn't automatically mean you've done something wrong.
So why might it happen?
Oh, various reasons. Maybe they need to look closer at your documents or ask for more details. Sometimes it's based on travel history, or maybe there's a specific note or annotation on your visa. Sometimes, honestly, it might just be random selection.
Okay. And what happens in secondary?
Expect more detailed questions, a closer look at all your paperwork, and crucially, they do have the authority to inspect your electronic devices.
Your phone, your laptop.
Yes. They can look at text messages, emails, social media, photos, files, even things like job offer letters if you have them stored, resumes, your school portal access.
Wow, okay. That's quite comprehensive. So given that, especially for students maybe coming back with CPT authorization, what are the practical tips for getting through smoothly?
Great question. Preparation is key. First, carry all your essential documents and make sure they're current. Valid passport with at least 6 months validity left. Unexpired F-1 visa. Your most recent I-20, signed by your DSO for travel within the last 6 months.
Okay, passport, visa, signed I-20. What else, specifically for CDT?
Definitely your CPT employment letter. It should be on company letterhead, stating your job title, your duties, the start date, and importantly explaining how the job relates to your major field of study. If If you happen to be on OPT, carry your EAD card, an enrollment verification letter from your school confirming you're enrolled full-time, and, if applicable, participating in CBT is also a very good idea. And maybe your class schedule or an unofficial transcript. Oh, and if you're in a hybrid program, some proof of your required in-person attendance wouldn't hurt.
Okay, so have the paperwork ready. What about actually answering the questions?
Be prepared to explain yourself clearly and confidently. The CBP officer might not know the details of, say, Day 1 CPT programs. You need to be able to articulate what your degree is, where you're studying, how your classes are structured, especially the in-person parts, how your CPT job fits into your major, and reinforce that you are still a full-time student.
Can you give an example?
Sure, something like, I'm pursuing my master's in data science at XYZ University. My internship as a data analyst is required practical training for my program, listed right here on my I-20. I'm currently enrolled full-time at 3 graduate courses, and 2 of them meet on campus weekly. Clear, concise, connects the dots.
That helps. And what about the digital side, given they can check phones?
Yeah, this is increasingly important. Maintain a professional digital presence. Go through your recent messages, emails. Remove anything casual or jokey that could be misinterpreted, like saying you're just here to work or complaining about classes. Organize school documents in obvious folders. And critically, do not carry screenshots or files that contradict what you're telling the officer about your enrollment or student status. That's a recipe for disaster.
Good advice. Any final tips for the port of entry experience?
Stay calm, be polite, be confident. Secondary inspection isn't an accusation. Answer honestly and directly. Don't volunteer excessive information, but don't be evasive. If you're genuinely unsure how to answer something, it's okay to ask if you can contact your DSO. Keep their contact info printed out, just in case. And know that in a worst-case scenario where denial seems likely, you might be offered voluntary withdrawal. Taking that is usually much better for future travel than having a formal removal or deportation order on your record. Oh, and one last thing. After every entry, go online and check your electronic I-94 record. Make sure your class of admission, F-1, and admit until date, usually DS for duration of status, are correct. Errors happen.
Okay, that's incredibly helpful advice for navigating arrival. Now let's move into something a bit more serious you touched on, inadmissibility. Specifically, that section 212A6C about fraud or misrepresentation. Sounds serious.
It is extremely serious. Basically, this part of the law says if you try to get into the U.S. or get any immigration benefit by committing fraud or willfully misrepresenting a material fact, you can be found inadmissible.
And willfully misrepresenting a material fact means lying.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Intentionally providing false information about something important. It covers a lot. For F-1 students, common ways this comes up are material misrepresentation during the visa application, maybe lying about your grades, your English ability, or who's paying for your studies. Another huge one with lifetime consequences is falsely claiming to be a U.S. citizen. Never, ever do that. And tying back to what we discussed, violating the terms of your visa can also be seen as a form of misrepresentation about your original intent. Working without authorization, not being a full-time student, these could potentially lead to findings of inadmissibility later.
So even casual text, like you mentioned, joking about working, not studying, that could be twisted.
It potentially could, yes. If an officer sees messages that seem to contradict your stated purpose of being a student, they might interpret that as misrepresentation. It highlights the need for caution in what you communicate, even privately.
What are the actual consequences if someone is found inadmissible under this section?
They're severe. Denial of entry at the border, being sent back home, possible detention. It creates a huge barrier for future visa applications, like for an H-1B work visa or green card. There can also be fines or formal bars preventing re-entry for years or even permanently in some cases.
Is there any way around it? Waivers, maybe?
There are limited waivers, yes, like the 212I waiver for fraud misrepresentation or the 212D3 non-immigrant waiver, but the standards are very high. Often you need to prove extreme hardship to a qualifying U.S. citizen or permanent resident relative, like a spouse or parent. And getting these waivers approved is tough. You mentioned the stats earlier for 212I. The approval rate in 2023 was only 48%. That's more denials than approvals. It really stresses the importance of being truthful from the start.
A very stark warning indeed. And this ties into the increasing scrutiny of our online lives, doesn't it? How exactly is the government looking at social media?
Yes, the digital footprint is a major factor now. U.S. government agencies can, and increasingly do, look at social media profiles and online activity. This happens during visa processing, at border screening, when you apply for benefits like OPT or status changes, and in enforcement situations.
And there have been recent policy changes making this more formal.
Absolutely. A big one kicked in June 18th, 2025. The Department of State now has mandatory expanded social media vetting for F, M, and J visa applicants. Applicants basically have to provide their social media handles, and consular officers review these accounts looking for potentially derogatory information.
Derogatory information like what?
Things like perceived support for terrorism, certain types of political activism, anti-Semitic content, or even just general hostile attitudes towards the U.S. Applicants should probably expect this to lead to longer waits for visa appointments and processing.
And it's not just the State Department.
No, the Department of Homeland Security, which includes USCIS and CBP, is also involved. DHS put out a notice around April 9, 2025, stating that USCIS will consider things like anti-Semitic posts or harassment by students as negative factors when deciding on immigration benefits. Plus, questions about social media have been on visa forms like the DS-160 since 2019. And USCIS is moving towards collecting social media info on more forms. Your online activity is definitely part of the picture they consider.
So the takeaway for students is crystal clear. Be mindful, be careful about what you post online. What seems private or casual might not be.
Exactly. It's about awareness and responsible digital citizenship, especially when navigating the U.S. immigration system.
Okay, we've covered some serious challenges, but let's pivot now towards solutions and staying positive. Despite the complexities, students absolutely can navigate this successfully, right?
Absolutely. And the key really is being proactive and informed. There's a lot you can do.
What are some top preventive measures?
Well, number one, back to basics. Accurate and up-to-date documentation. Always. Keep copies, know your dates, double-check everything. Errors cause delays and problems. Number two, don't be afraid to seek expert advice. For anything complex or uncertain, consult a qualified immigration attorney. Your university's International Student Office, especially your DSO, is also primary resource. Use them. And number three, truly understand your visa requirements. Read the materials, attend orientations, ask questions. Ignorance isn't an excuse in the eyes of immigration officials. Know the rules about enrollment, work, reporting changes.
Those covered the compliance side. What about just surviving and thriving as a student here? The day-to-day challenges.
That's crucial too, because struggling personally or academically can indirectly impact your status if you, say, drop courses without authorization. So for the academic workload, develop good time management, use tutoring, form study groups, don't fall behind. For managing finances, budget carefully. Look for permissible on-campus jobs. Those usually don't require special authorization beyond DSO approval. Apply for scholarships available to international students. Check with your school's financial aid office and resources like Education USA. Remember, U.S. federal aid isn't an option.
What about fitting in culturally? Homesickness.
Yeah, adapting culturally takes effort. Get involved. Join clubs, attend campus events, participate in orientation. It helps build a support network. And for homesickness, stay connected with family back home, but also build connections here. Find student groups from your country or region. Establish routines. Talk to counselors if you need to. It's normal but manageable.
And you mentioned earlier the choice of university itself matters.
Immensely. A well-established university with a strong, responsive international student office and experienced DSOs is invaluable. They provide timely I-20s, clear guidance, and ongoing support. That infrastructure makes a huge difference in navigating issues and maintaining your status smoothly. It's a factor worth considering when choosing where to study.
It really is fascinating how much control students can take just by being informed, organized, and proactive. It's not just about reacting to problems.
Exactly. It's about anticipating, preparing, and knowing where to turn for help before things become critical.
So let's quickly recap this deep dive. We've looked at the core rules of F-1 status enrollment, SEVIS authorized work. We walked through the port of entry, including secondary inspection. We tackled serious issues like inadmissibility for misrepresentation and the growing focus on social media. And importantly, we highlighted proactive steps you can take.
That's right. And if there's one core message to take away, it's this. Knowledge, paying attention to detail, and seeking guidance early from your DSO, from attorneys when needed. These are your most powerful tools for a successful U.S. educational experience.
We really want to emphasize, don't just passively collect this information, understand it, internalize it, and act on it. Stay updated to policies like the social media vetting we discussed can and do change. Check official sources regularly. So here's a final thought for you to consider as you move forward. In this complex world, how will you personally take ownership of this knowledge, not just to tick boxes and meet requirements, but to genuinely thrive on your international journey? All the best, and we will meet again with another important subject on the deep dive.